Andrew had been imprisoned for half a year. One day, Isabel called me. In fact, it wasn't Andrew's idea to ask your grandma to clarify it. I asked him to do it, but he refused at first. I interrupted her, but he finally agreed. Didn't he? Isabel on the other end of the line didn't utter a word anymore. In the past half a year, I went back to work, and my grandma's health was getting better and better. She seemed to be in a better mental state. When Andrew came out of prison, he often called me or came to my company downstairs to wait for me. He didn't care about being recognized and pointed at. I didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore, so I blacklisted him. Later, I asked Devin to do me a favor and pretended to be my boyfriend to pick me up from work. Andrew stopped harassing me and didn't come to the company to see me anymore. I thought he had moved on. As the weather was nice, I pushed my grandma to the lawn of the nursing home to bask in the sun. She had enjoyed recalling what happened between me and Andrew when we were kids recently. At first, I felt awkward, but I felt nothing when I heard too much about it. What a big fire! At that time, Andrew rushed to save you. He was so thin, but he carried you on his shoulder. I interrupted her with a smile. No, he didn't. He just supported me. My grandma pouted and waved her hand to show that she didn't care. And last time when you two fought with Gordon next door, Gordon threw a fist at Andrew and you blocked it for Andrew. At that moment, Andrew was changed completely, and his eyes were red, just like the one on the TV. Oh right, it's Super Saiyan. I nodded. It was true, but his name is Gary, not Gordon. My grandma blinked, then covered her mouth and laughed for a long time. Suddenly, she said, Andrew came to see me yesterday. My smile froze for a moment. In consideration of my grandma's reminiscence in the past 2 days, I leaned over on both sides of my grandma's wheelchair and asked, do you want me to be together with him again? How could it be possible? My grandma frowned and her eyes were full of sadness. He did that to you at that time. They all said that I am a fool. I only remember happy things and automatically filter out painful things. But it's been a long time since Andrew stayed with you. I can't forget him even if I have a bad memory. How can you forget him? My grandma held my hand and lowered her eyes. But I also want you to only remember happy things. When Andrew was a child, he was only good to you. In the evening, I finished my work and went home. As soon as I got out of the car, I saw a tall and familiar figure downstairs. Selena. There was a large bouquet of roses in his hands and Andrew's eyes were so deep that I could not see them through. We hadn't seen each other for a long time, and he had lost a lot of weight. His originally handsome features were even sharper and deeper on his thin and slightly pale face. Happy Valentine's Day. He opened the box in his hand. It was a brand new women's diamond-encrusted watch. I glanced at his left wrist and found that he had put on the man's watch. Looking at the expectation in his eyes, I said straightforwardly, you know I won't take it. He didn't say anything but looked at me intently. The moonlight was cold and white as if it had spread a faint indescribable loneliness on his face. I turned around and walked up the stairs. It rained just now and I slipped unexpectedly. I seemed to hear a slight sound from my ankle. In just 2 seconds, before I fell awkwardly, I fell into a hard chest. The familiar breath instantly shrouded me. I stiffened for a moment, pushed him away, and supported my body against the wall. I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my ankle. Sit down, said Andrew, taking off his coat and spreading it on the dry slate. I didn't move. He pursed his lips slightly and held me up forcefully. Before I was about to refuse, he said calmly, don't go against your own body. He paused. It's not worth it for me. I wore a faint smile, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. You have a clear estimation of yourself. He lowered his eyes, took off my high heels, gently rubbed my ankle with his finger palps, and said, when I was in prison, I often thought of our past. We just went to college back then, and I haven't entered showbiz yet. You wanted to have sandwiches, but you only asked me to buy them for you at the bakery at the south gate of our school, and you didn't want anything from other bakeries. Later, I found out that the sandwiches there were cheaper than in other places. Every time you took a shower and didn't want to dry your hair, you would lie on my legs and ask me to help you dry your hair. There was one time when you got drunk. You told me that it felt like a husband and a wife getting along with each other after getting married. Andrew. I interrupted him. I can't pretend nothing has happened. Andrew looked at me with his deep eyes. When I was in prison, I missed you every day. Then I realize how much I love you, but I don't love you now." My tone was flat. Andrew's face turned pale and he kept silent for a moment. "I went to see Grandma. She said she didn't know Devin." "Selena, if you have a boyfriend, you will definitely tell Grandma." I sneered. "So what?" Andrew stared at me and said, "Selena, we have known each other for so many years and we have been in love for so many years. Our common memories are winding through our whole youth. And you can't get over me." When I looked into his eyes, there was sadness in my chest, running around in my body, and my eyes were swollen and painful. "Yes, I can't get over you." I took a deep breath and continued, "I can't forget those beautiful memories." It seemed that Andrew didn't expect me to admit it directly. He was slightly stunned, and then he smoothed his knitted brows as if he wanted to say something. "But what about those disgusting and embarrassing memories? Can the betrayal and harm you brought to me and my grandma be offset because of these beautiful memories?" "Andrew, it doesn't work. They are like thorns, firmly piercing into my heart." I poked my chest, tears streaming down uncontrollably, but I didn't care. I just looked straight at him. "Until now, every time I see you, these thorns will scream in my body, pierce my flesh and blood, and remind me with pain how much harm you have brought to me." In a panic, Andrew reached out to wipe my tears, but when he saw my eyes, which were full of disgust, he stopped in the air and withdrew his hand. He closed his eyes and looked at me sadly. "Then tell me what I should do to make you." I shook my head helplessly. "You said you had been missing me when you were in prison. Did you only miss me? Didn't you think of Emma for even 1 second? Andrew said with a trembling voice. "Selena, I've told you that I only treat her. It's just a temporary fresh feeling, isn't it?" I looked at him. My vision was blurred and my voice was hoarse. "Back then, Emma posted solid evidence about how you met and fell in love with each other. You didn't explain anything at that time and left me alone in the hotel. Do you know how many times I read that tweet in those past 2 days?" Andrew's face was ashen and he looked at me with his red eyes. "At the end of June, I spent a whole day traveling to visit your crew. When I arrived, I was unaccustomed to the local conditions, but you were absent-minded and kept looking through your phone. Later, you said that the director had to shoot a new scene and went back to the crew. In Emma's tweet, she had period pain that night and sent you a message that she wanted to have cakes. You bought her cakes and helped her massage her belly for the whole night." I cried silently, no matter whether it was because of the temporary fresh feeling. At least at that moment, when both Emma and I needed you by our side, you chose Emma. You also felt sorry for Emma, and in the past year, every time we got along, you unconsciously ignored me and were indifferent to me. I could find the corresponding details in Emma's tweet. You loved her and treated her well. Andrew covered his eyes, tears streaming down from his fingers. "I'm sorry, Selena. I don't know why enduring the pain in my ankle, I struggled to stand up and said, 'Don't you understand that we can't go back?' Andrew, I can't get over you now, but it doesn't mean that I can't get over you in the future. 1 year or 2, or 4 years. What's more, love doesn't mean everything. I can still live a good life alone, but please don't bother me anymore." I limped forward with my back straight. Andrew said in a sobbing voice behind me, "If only I hadn't entered showbiz." Before entering showbiz, I only treated you well. I didn't look back or even stop. It suddenly occurred to me that the reason why Andrew entered showbiz was actually to buy me a laptop. At that time, I complained to Andrew that my laptop was so slow when I was writing my thesis, and he remembered it. When he was distributing leaflets on the street, he was scouted and asked if he was willing to shoot an advertisement. The reward was $850, which was enough to buy a laptop. That night, he held his chin with his hands, quietly appreciating my surprised look when I unwrapped the gift. He touched my head, gently and proudly. Later, that advertisement became famous and he officially entered showbiz. I felt happy for him, but also a little worried. He smiled, lowered his head, and kissed me on the face. His tone was so firm. "Who says people will change after becoming rich? Selena, I will make a lot of money for our future. I will love you forever." But the young man who had promised himself over and over again that he would never change finally went back on his word. The end.